Hello my lovelies, welcome back to another video, and today we have the big one. We have my top 10 books of all time, books that I recommend again and again and again, books that I fell in love with and think they're just marvellous. So yeah, I suppose this is the video that I like to watch other people do because it shows me how similar our reading tastes are. But yeah, without any further ado, let's do the top 10. So in at number 10, I actually have a children's book that I haven't read since I was a child, but I absolutely loved the series. My brother has them all on his shelves at my mum's house. He doesn't live there anymore, but he still has a bedroom full of books. And that is The Pearls of Lutra by Bryn Jaques. So there are many, many, many books in this series and they are all fabulous. But this was the first one I read, and a friend at primary school lent it to me. It seemed quite chunky for a 10, 11-year-old, but I was quite a prolific reader at the time, so I gave it a go, and my God, they're good. These books are so amazing. To be fair, I could probably do with rereading them because I don't think I ever read them all. So yeah, this series is basically set in like a woodland, and you're following the woodland animals on like little adventures. And it was a while ago that I read this one, but the brief synopsis is there are these little pearls, the pearls of Lutra, and the main characters in the book have to go and try and find them, and it's an adventure, and it's just full of beautiful descriptions and like woodland feels and coziness, and oh, they are delicious. I highly recommend, if you like reading middle grade, pick these up. If you've got kids that age, give these a go. Yeah, I think they were fabulous and were some of the earlier books that I remember really loving as a child. In at number 9, we have a classic, and that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This I also read at school, though I read this at secondary school. I did mention this actually in my autumn recommendations video. This is a gothic love story. It's not really a love story because it's highly unhealthy as a relationship, but it's gothic, spooky, dark, depressing. I loved it for all of those reasons. So for those that don't know, this follows Cathy and Heathcliff. Cathy is part of quite a well-to-do family. Heathcliff is sort of adopted and is like he's like the servant boy who lives in the stables and stuff. He's not very well treated by Cathy's father, but then Heathcliff goes off, has a transformation and comes back as a gentleman, though. Is he really a gentleman? And a love story spans the childhood and adulthood of these two characters. And it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I loved the BBC adaptation of this as well, so highly recommend if you like gothic gritty darkness. Number 8 is actually a book I read this year, and that's The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Dare. This is a fantastic book. It's about a young girl who is fighting for an education in a society that doesn't think girls need it. She gets sold off by her father to an older man to be his third wife, and she goes through a lot of trauma, but she never loses her spunk for life and her determination to be more than she is expected to be. And she's the best character, loved it to pieces, and highly recommend. In 7th place, we have American Dirt by Jeanine Cummins. I recently recommended this, I think, to Nikki in my 100 subscribers, woohoo, recommend some books to people I love, but video. But this is this is set in Mexico, and it follows a mother and son who are fleeing a cartel trying to make their way over the border into America where they'll be safe. This has so many great themes in it. Obviously there's motherhood in there. It's a book that is a journey, which I quite like. I don't read that many of them these days, but I really loved that it was a journey in obviously the physical sense and the emotional sense, and the things that both the mother and the son went through on this journey were horrific and heartrending, and it was brilliantly written, a real page turner, and I would highly recommend. I think I've said highly recommend every time. I need to think of a different phrase, and I would greatly recommend this book to everybody because I think it's really, really good. It also brings to light the reality of some of the stuff going on over in South America and the whole immigrant situation with the US. So yeah, I think a lot of people will like this one. Okay, so moving on to number 6, we have The Clan of the Cave Bear by Jeanine M. Auel. This I read at the end of last year and would highly recommend this as a winter read, actually. So when I do my winter recommendations, this will probably be in it. And this follows a young girl who loses her parents in an earthquake when she's like 5, stumbling along the river, and gets taken in by a clan of Neanderthals. And it's about her living with them, and she's very different to them. She's taller, her legs aren't bowed, she's got more of an aptitude for learning, and it's about the woman that takes her in and teaches her about medicine and those sorts of things, and the clan rituals, and how some people in the clan take a quite passionate dislike to her. And yeah, I loved this book. It was an easy 5 stars, and it's also part of a series. I think there's either 5 or 7 in the series, and I've got the second one on my shelves downstairs waiting for me to pick it up. So yeah, this book is brilliant, absolutely stunning. So number 5 is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I also talked about this in my recommendation video that I did for 100 subscribers, but this one follows 2 friends in Depression era America. They go to work on a ranch. One of them has sort of learning difficulties, disability. It's never really diagnosed in the book, but he's one of those people who he struggles to read people, struggles to interpret certain situations. Sorry, I just coughed and I look like I'm crying, but I'm fine. And this book just explores friendship. It explores the cruelties of humanity as people take advantage of others. And yeah, this book is heartbreaking and beautiful, and yeah, I can't really describe how special this book is, really, because it is beautiful. Number 4, and we have another book I've read this year, so I feel like I'm spoiling a little bit my best books of the year that will be coming at the end of the year. But for this, I have got All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood. So if my friends Tammy and Zoe are watching, they'll know how much I love this book because I forced them both to read it. So this follows a young girl. She has a very difficult upbringing. Trigger warnings for pretty much everything in this book, so check that out if you do get triggered. But she basically doesn't have parents who give a crap, and she meets an older man, Kellen, who is sort of involved with her dad's dodgy dealings, and he looks after her and he shows her love and he shows her care that she has never ever experienced in her life. She also has a younger brother that she is effectively fully responsible for because her parents have no responsible bone in their bodies, and you see her grow up, and this book made me feel uncomfortable most of the time. It was a book where I got to the end and I didn't know if I enjoyed it, and I suppose I still don't, because I don't think enjoy is the right word, but this book has stuck with me. I still don't know how I feel about it. I still feel very uncomfortable thinking about it, and for me that's why it hits the number 4 spot, because I'm gonna have to reread it at some point to see if I can make heads or tails of how I feel, really, because at the moment I'm a bit like, I don't know if I liked what happened there. But yeah, without giving too many spoilers away, it's yeah, give it a go. Number 3 is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I read this quite a few years ago, again forced several people to read it after me, but this book is beautiful. So this is historical fiction. It's World War II historical fiction, which I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't read World War II historical fiction, but but you get different perspective here. You get the perspective of a Korean woman who moves to Japan, and that alone was interesting enough to see how Korea and Japan fought in the war and the ramifications of the war on those countries and on the people living in them, which is something that certainly I never learnt about at school, but I think it's really, really interesting. It's multi-generational, so you sort of start off with, I suppose, the protagonist's parents and how they met and how they had the girl, is her name Sonia? Something like that. And then she ultimately moves to Japan and has a family of her own, and then we follow her children. And it's heartbreaking. It's hard to describe without giving spoilers, because you fall in love with these characters and they're flawed and they are hurting inside, and you just want them to succeed and be happy, and life isn't like that, and it sucks. And that's what made the book beautiful, because it was real. It was the reality of living with trauma and living with racism and living with poverty. And yeah, I absolutely love this book. Loved it, which is obviously why it's my number 3 best book of all time. So yeah, if you haven't read it, you should definitely pick it up. Okay, number 2, going for a fantasy. I think this is the only fantasy on my list, but it is the big one. It is Lord of the Rings. So okay, technically you could call it 3 books, but it was written as one, so I'm counting it as one. I don't think I need to go too much into the synopsis. I think most people know what Lord of the Rings is about. A little hobbit called Frodo, sorry, wrong book. Frodo, who has to go and destroy a ring in the absolute bare bones. But the friendships in this book, the dynamics between characters, the flawed characters, particularly the likes of Boromir, the classic good against evil, it was all just magical book. And yeah, I don't think it will ever move from my top 10, because I mean, J.R. Tolkien is a genius, really. Writing this book was amazing, and really it's not that long of a book. I mean, what are they, about 300 pages a piece, so 900 pages, but it's epic. most people are doing 700-800 page books, and they're doing 10-13 books to create the epicness that he managed in less than 1,000 pages. So that sort of shows you the level of skill that that Tolkien had. And yeah, these books, they'll always be in here in my heart. So yeah, love those. And then we come to the number 1 spot, and this book emotionally destroyed me. And that's why it sits at the top, and that is The Nightingale by Kristin. So this book is also set in World War II, historical fiction. It is a dual timeline, so you hear from an elderly woman who's sort of narrating the story back, the story of 2 sisters in France during the occupation, and you're trying to work out which of the sisters is telling the story. And you've got the 2 sisters, Isabelle and Vienne. One of them goes and fights in the French resistance, and one of them has a daughter. Her husband's gone off to fight in the war, and she is just trying to help where she can. She's trying to help Jewish children when obviously the Germans are coming in and doing that. Her house gets occupied, and she goes through a lot. And I suppose this book explores what is bravery. Is bravery going out and fighting in the resistance, or is bravery what you do at home? And both of these sisters are brave in their own way, though they are the polar opposites of each other. So they are together at the beginning of the book, and you see how different they are. And you have Isabelle, who's like, oh, ready to go, and she wants to do all these things, and she's just ready for it. She's ready to go to the fight and do everything that she can. And then you have Vienne, who is a lot more restrained, and she has a family to think of, and she wants to stay at home where her husband will come to if he comes home from the war. And yeah, you just have these complete polar opposite personalities, but you can see that they're sisters from their inner strength. Oh, everything about this I loved. And the movie for this is coming out in December, and I'm so excited. It was supposed to be last year, but bloody COVID. So this year it will be coming out, and I will absolutely be watching that and taking a whole box of tissues with me, because pretty much from the 50% mark of this book, I cried for the rest. So yeah, obviously with it being based in World War II, lots of trigger warnings for violence, assault, sexual assault, death of children, death of spouses, death of friends. I mean, yeah. But this is my all-time favourite book, and yeah, I know lots of people have read it. If you haven't read it, I would really recommend it, even if historical fiction isn't your sort of go-to genre. Okay, so that is it. That is my top 10 books of all time that I highly recommend to anybody and everybody. Obviously there'll be some things on there that you think sound not up your street, but yeah, if you're looking to push your wheelhouse, obviously if you have an interest in historical fiction, quite a lot of those cover that. Hello, editing Gemma here. I'm gonna be honest, I got a phone call, I got distracted at the end of this video. I thought I'd finished it. I hadn't said bye or anything, so I'm coming in from like 3 days later when I finally get around to editing it, and saying thank you all very much for watching. If you'd like to consider subscribing, that'd be great. I understand if this is just too much slapdash for you, but this was good. It was fun. I will see you on the next one. Okay, bye.